The summer garden is still going strong, but the fall garden is already beginning. While we can grow many of the same crops in the fall that we grew in the spring, choosing specific varieties for the fall and winter that can perform better in the cold conditions can really make a difference. Not only can you potentially get a higher yield with these varieties, but many times you'll find that they will stay in your garden for longer into the cold in the late fall and in the early winter. In this video, I'm going to share with you 5 crops that I grow in my fall and winter garden, what varieties I like to grow that are specifically cold tolerant and well suited for fall, plus some tips on how you can choose varieties that will do the same in your garden. One of the most popular crops in a fall garden is lettuce. And while many varieties of lettuce will do well in both the spring and the fall, there are some that are specifically more cold tolerant than others. 2 of my favorites are Tango that I got from True Leaf Market last year that survived even through the snow and ice, and also Winter Density. This is a very popular crop that many gardeners grow depending on the climate throughout the winter. These are just 2 examples of lettuce varieties that I have found grow very well in my garden, in my zone, well into the winter. But there are other varieties that are just as suited for this purpose. Here are a few tips to help you decide which varieties to try in your garden. First of all, when you're selecting seeds from seed catalogs, read the seed catalogs very carefully. They will often give hints and specifically will say better for winter gardens or cold tolerant. Take note of which varieties say that, and you know that you've got a great option for a fall or winter garden. Another thing you can do is in the spring, take note of which varieties of lettuce get bitter faster and start bolting first. Often those are the ones that don't really like the heat, which means they'll do a lot better in the fall and winter. Last year, I noticed that my Tango variety that did so well in fall and winter was the first one to get bitter in the spring and summer. So if you were disappointed with a particular variety in the spring, try it in the fall and you may find yourself pleasantly surprised at how great it performs. Another staple in my fall garden is broccoli. And it took me quite a bit of time to realize which varieties performed best for me. What I found is that year after year, especially in the fall garden, the 2 varieties that perform the best are Green Magic and Castle Dome. Now understand that I'm in Zone 7B in Arkansas, so varieties that might work better for you may be different than for me, so try different varieties. One other thing that you can do when you're looking at seed catalogs is, again, you can look at keywords that might clue you into which varieties are going to be better for you in the fall and winter. Look for keywords in seed catalogs like winter garden, cold hardy, or even field holding capacity. In the fall and winter garden, often I'm not harvesting my broccoli as soon as it becomes mature because I can leave it in the garden for a little bit longer and just harvest it when I need it. Field holding capacity can be used for both spring and fall when it comes to how long the broccoli will hold in the garden. But if you see ideal for fall and field holding capacity, then you've got a winner. Another staple in my fall and winter garden is cabbage. I particularly love cabbage because it holds a little bit longer in the garden than broccoli does. So oftentimes I'm harvesting cabbage all the way up until January, depending on the weather. This is a little baby cabbage plant that I started from seed. This particular seed I found from Johnny's, and I've been growing it for several years. I'm not quite sure I'm going to pronounce it right, but I call it Farrow. This is one of those that I've tried and I love it. I'm not sure if it necessarily does better in the fall as it does in the spring and summer because I grow it both times and it does great in both seasons. But I like this particular variety because it makes very dense heads. I feel like for the head that I get out of this cabbage, I get so much more mass in what I'm able to use in the kitchen. It also holds really well in the garden, so I can pick it whenever I want to. I've never had one of these split on me, which is actually a little bit more common in the summer, but it also holds really well into the fall and winter. But this is just based on my personal experience with this particular variety. Like the other varieties, you can look for keywords in the description in the seed catalog. The Johnny's seed catalog makes this even easier because they have a little snowflake beside any of the varieties that are particularly good for fall and winter gardening. And sometimes you don't even have to look any further than the name of the variety itself. Territorial Seed Company has a variety called Tundra that can withstand down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, while I haven't grown that before, that might be one to definitely consider if you're looking for a cold hardy variety in the fall and winter garden. One thing to keep in mind with cabbage is that not all cabbages are created equal as far as how long they take to mature. Some are short season varieties like farro, but some are longer and they take a lot longer to grow in your garden. Depending on your climate, you may not want to choose a long season variety just because it may get cold too quickly for them. Even though I found them to be very cold hardy in my zone 7B climate, typically I do have to get them out of the garden by January. Now, if you live in an area where you don't get as cold as we do, you might enjoy the longer season varieties. And in fact, this is probably the time of year that you have the best success in growing them. So always consider your particular climate and your particular winter and try different varieties to see which ones shine in your garden. I grow carrots in both my spring and fall gardens, but I have noticed that some varieties keep a little bit better in the winter garden than they do in the summer. Specifically last year, I noticed that a variety from Wood Prairie Farm called Scarlet Keeper was able to withstand a really early cold snap that we had, I think in December, I believe. I usually have carrots that last all season long without any kind of damage, but that particular cold snap damaged almost all of my carrots except for the Scarlet Keeper. When it came time then to selecting the varieties that I was going to put in my fall planting, Scarlet Keeper was definitely one I would include. New Carota is another variety that I found does really well both in the spring and in the fall garden. It's a highly productive variety. Specifically, I like it in my raised bed and my clay soils. It tends to do very, very well. If you've ever gone seed shopping for carrots though, you will find that you have lots of different options. So what are some things that you want to be looking for when you're shopping for those seeds in your seed catalogs? Whether you're shopping in the fall right now or you're doing all your seed shopping in January and you want to buy varieties that are best for spring and then varieties that are best for fall, which ones are you going to save for your fall planting? Some keywords that I found in my search were overwintering, storage, great for fall and winter. Again, you can also look at the variety itself. Territorial Seeds has a variety called Eskimo. Could you get any more obvious than that? Another thing you can do is look at your spring planting. Just like with lettuce, if you had any particular variety of carrot that started to bolt prematurely or started to bolt in the hot weather, or when you picked it, it happened to be a little bit more spicy than normal, a lot of the times that's a response to the heat in the spring and summer garden. That then may be an excellent choice for the fall and winter garden. Finally, one thing I love to grow in my fall and winter garden is any kind of greens, specifically greens that I will use for salads. And what I have found is that the most cold tolerant greens I can find are brassica greens. Brassica greens like mustard, kale, or arugula are more cold tolerant than your lettuces, and so they're going to last you a little bit longer in the garden. Plus, they just have lots of flavor. What I've noticed is that mustard greens in particular, when you pick them young, they're not near as pungent and spicy as the ones when they're older, and they are extremely cold tolerant. They will sail through the winter here in my zone 7B. The only thing you have to keep an eye on is that when it does start to heat up in the spring, they definitely will start to become spicy as they start to grow. But we're talking about the fall and winter garden. They're an excellent choice. Another thing I love to include are greens mixes. These are specific mixes of different varieties of greens. I've gotten several different mixes from Johnny's Seeds. This year I'm doing the premium greens mix and the cheap frills mix. I've noticed though that if I order a little bit bigger packages, while it may cost a little bit more, there's a lot of seeds that will go a long way. I bought those for my spring garden too, and I am still growing them into the fall and winter. I absolutely love the variety of those mixes, and I know that many of them are going to be very cold tolerant. I have to be honest, only in the past few years have I really started to pay attention to what varieties I was growing in the fall and winter. But as I have done that, I've noticed a huge difference. Still, because I've only been doing it a couple of years, I only have a little bit of experience in this area, and I would love it if you would share your experience if you have found a specifically cold tolerant variety of any of the crops that I've mentioned here, or maybe any of the ones that I haven't mentioned. Put them in the comments below. Also, please include your zone because that's always helpful to know if you have a particular cold tolerant variety, what zone you're growing in, and about how long in the season it will last. I would love to hear your suggestions. We're always up for new ideas in our gardens. And if you liked this video where I share information on varieties maybe you would like to consider in your garden, be sure to like and subscribe for more like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.